Are the girls ready? I asked my ex-wife rudely, standing at her door, which used to be our door, to pick up my 13 and 12-year-old daughters for the weekend. Almost. How are you, Sam? My ex-wife Pauline asked, sounding genuinely concerned. I only have 2 weekends a month. Please make sure they're ready on time, I growled in response, ignoring her question. I'm trying, Sam, but you know how they are. Can you give them a few more minutes to catch up? How are you? I'll wait in the car, I snapped, turning and heading for my vehicle. Sam, I heard my voice as I walked away. I didn't turn around. We talked about this all the time. She tried to ease her conscience, and I ignored her attempts. It was another 5 minutes or so before Karen, 13, and Wendy, 12, came running out of the house with the small bag of things they had brought with them when they came to stay for the weekend. They jumped into my car saying, "Sorry, Dad," in unison, and my anger melted away. As much as I hated to admit it, Pauline was right. Getting girls that age anywhere on time was like herding cats, and I couldn't be mad at them. Since they were only with me for a couple of days, I tried to make those days special by playing the role of Disneyland dad. I just didn't want my precious time to be consumed by everyday chores. After they told me everything they had done over the past 2 weeks, as usual, I got ready to tell them the big news. They had been asking me to buy them a new Nintendo game console for a long time, and I had finally been able to afford it. I couldn't wait to hear and see their reaction, and I was looking forward to buying the console with them. But when I told them the good news, I was disappointed. "Oh, it's okay, Dad," Karen said. "Dad Dave already bought us a toy and a bunch of games." I instantly went from disappointment to rage. Dad Dave, damn Dad Dave. If I thought I was on the edge of a cliff before, now it felt like I had fallen a few inches further. Perhaps I should explain. Dave was, and I emphasize was, my best friend since high school. He was a regular guy who had more luck in business than in love. He wasn't a gambler or a womanizer or whatever they call it these days. He just hadn't met the right woman. We met a few women he dated, and some of them were very nice, but even I could tell that none of them were right for him. Although he wasn't related to us, my children started calling him Uncle Dave, and that suited us fine. Pauline's best friend was Aunt Daphne. They were as close as siblings could be, and we didn't think anything of it. I trusted them all like family. I swear I had no idea anything was wrong. Nothing changed in our marriage. Our relationship was pleasant and easy, and we still spent a lot of time together. I found out on Friday evening when I came home. Pauline told me that the kids were staying with friends for the weekend, and I immediately thought she had planned a romantic weekend for us. No. I sat there in shock when Pauline told me that she and Dave had fallen in love, and that I would be served with divorce papers the next day. She claimed that they had never had sex, at least not full intercourse, which I didn't believe. But at the same time, I realized that it didn't matter anymore. She said she was staying with Dave that night and that I had to find another place to stay starting the next day. I told her to go to hell and not to leave. I was wrong. She didn't tell me there was a court order to evict me from the house. There were no allegations of abuse or anything like that. Her lawyer simply asked the judge to grant her temporary custody of the children and the house until the case was heard, effectively kicking me out, and the judge granted the order. I didn't fight the divorce, but I tried very hard to make her life miserable. I mostly made absurd demands such as the house, full custody of the children, and alimony equal to 75% of her salary. This dragged the case out for a while, but eventually I got tired of it. Threats of contempt of court for delaying the case helped, and I just signed the papers. I didn't pay child support because our salaries were about the same, but I was supposed to pay child support, and it hit my budget hard. I lived very modestly to be able to have fun every weekend when I had the girls, so I had to spend time saving up for a game console. I think if I look at things objectively, I could admit that Pauline tried to be as polite as possible, given the circumstances, but I didn't respond to that properly. Why should she be polite, I reasoned? She got everything she wanted, including a rich new husband, while I was barely making ends meet and getting 4 lousy days with the kids every month. It was simple economics. Pauline and I got along just fine on our salaries. Take away my salary, add Dave's much higher salary, plus the alimony I was paying. And they were living well, while I was just trying to make ends meet. Pauline and Dave got married 2 months after the divorce. The hardest part for me, at least for me, was how the kids reacted. I guess I expected more resistance or something like that, maybe a little rebellion or, "You're not my dad, you can't tell me what to do." But the girls took it all in stride. Dave had been part of their lives for many years, so when he moved into the house and into their mother's bedroom, it hardly bothered them. They were even happy that now they would have two homes where they could go as friends. Pauline and Dave's wedding anniversary was approaching, and since then I hadn't said a single polite word to them, or even a single word about the children. And now my children were calling this traitor Dad. I'm sure I didn't let it get to me over the weekend, but by the time I dropped the girls off at home, I was boiling with rage. I kissed the girls and they ran into the house, no doubt to play the new video game that was waiting for them, when Pauline opened the door. "I need to talk to you," I said, and from her reaction, I knew my tone was threatening. I turned and staggered away from the house, and Pauline closed the door and followed me. "What's wrong, Sam? Why won't you explain this Dad Dave nonsense to me? They have one dad, me. So what's this nonsense?" The girls wanted to call him something other than Uncle Dave ever since we got married. They felt awkward calling him Uncle when we were out with the family. We thought about just calling him Dave, but that seemed weird too, so we talked about it and decided to call him Dad Dave. And who suggested it? Well, I guess I did, but the girls thought it was great and agreed right away. I mentioned that you might have a problem with it, but they were sure you'd be fine. "Please don't make a big deal out of it, Sam. It's not your place to judge, okay? You don't have to hear them call another woman Mom, do you? Especially from that bitch who came and stole your family." "He didn't." "What about the video games? You knew perfectly well I wanted to buy them for them, but that damn Dave went and bought them. What the hell?" We just thought they had been waiting long enough and we weren't sure when you'd be able to do it. We just wanted the girls to have games." "Yeah, and show me how it's done." "Sam, no." "Sure, let's show you what a great Daddy Dave he is, and what a loser your real dad is, huh? Of course I left him and married a rich guy, and now we have tons of money and your loser dad struggles to make ends meet every month. But we can scrape together some change to buy you anything you want." "No way." "I think that's exactly what you're doing." I turned around, walked to my car, and drove away without looking back. I was so angry that I was afraid of what I might do. And a life sentence for killing Dave's damn dad was not part of my plans. This went on for the next few years. If Pauline and Dave were hoping for a thaw in our relationship, for my anger to soften, they were bound to be disappointed. They tried repeatedly to talk to me, mostly about my life and how they wanted me to get over my anger. But I ignored anything that didn't concern my girls. Since getting married, I hadn't had a relationship with a woman for various reasons. First, I had very little disposable income. I got a couple of raises, but it wasn't enough to make a difference. Second, I was very distrustful of women, so I focused on one-night stands with women who I knew weren't interested in a long-term relationship. Finally, I was still very angry about what they had done to me, and I even realized that I would be a bad second now. Resentment, anger, and poverty do not make women a means to satisfy one's needs. Of course, I didn't even think about psychological help. The last straw came on the first weekend of June. School had just ended, and I was looking forward to the summer weekends with my girls. Karen was already 15, very mature and responsible, and Wendy was 14, but I still enjoyed every minute I spent with them. "Are the girls ready?" I asked when Pauline opened the door, repeating the same phrase we had been saying for years. "They're not here, Sam," Pauline replied with a puzzled look on her face. "What do you mean they're not here?" I almost exploded. "They were invited to spend a week at the beach with Finley. They left this afternoon." "You got an email a week ago." "Yes, and I replied that I had the weekend off and would pick them up. You let them go." "Of course. I had no right to stop them." "No, why pass up an opportunity to ruin your life even more? Now you're just—" "Tell them I'll be here when they get back," I said and left. The whole week flew by in a fog. I was so angry, hurt, disappointed, and felt every negative emotion imaginable. I was still only spending 4 days a month with them, although we sometimes took one day for special occasions, and I didn't want to give that up. If only I had known. The following Friday evening, I returned home, this time to talk to them about going out of town for the weekend against my wishes. Since the divorce, I had only stopped by a few times, always at the girls' request. I did the same now, not wanting to have this conversation on the street. I walked into the living room. Pauline and Dave were standing in the kitchen watching me enter the living room. Later, I wondered if they knew what was in store for me. The girls were waiting for me, and I struggled to maintain my composure as I sat down across from them. "Mom said you wanted to talk to us about the trip with Finley this week? We sent you a letter to let you know we were going," Karen began. "And I replied that it was my weekend and I expected you to be here and spend it with me." "Dad, I wanted to tell you we're going. I didn't ask for permission. What? I practically shouted. You're not even 16 yet. What makes you think you can make decisions like that without your parents' permission? I got permission from my parents, Dad. Mom knows Finley and said we could go if you didn't mind. And you thought the letter you sent me telling me you were coming counted as permission? Come on, Dad, I'm 15 years old. We're not little kids anymore. We're growing up and I want to spend time with our friends. I thought you'd understand. I hardly ever see you. Are you saying you'd rather do this than spend time with me? Dad, we're getting older and we want to spend time with our friends. I can't ask them to adjust their lives to fit your visit schedule. Hell, we have plans almost every weekend. Pool parties, trips to the beach, you name it. We're hardly ever home on the weekends. It became clear to me that my daughters were trying to tell me that they preferred to spend time with their friends rather than with me, but they were trying to do so without saying the words. It was like a knife in my heart, and I had to accept that this part of my life was over. I suddenly stopped being angry and I was overcome with sadness at the loss of my girls. I didn't want the girls to know that they were killing me, so I tried to accept it. Okay, so you just want to give up weekend visits? I thought I heard a slight sigh from Paulina, but the girls didn't react, so maybe it was just my imagination. We're just really busy these days, Dad. You remember how it was, but that doesn't mean we don't love you. That was exactly how it was. 4 lousy days a month, and they couldn't even give me that. The rest of the time they spent with Mom and Dad. Damn, Dave. There was no room for me anymore. I didn't expect my fatherhood to end when the girls became teenagers, but that's how it turned out. Of course, girls, I understand. We'll visit you, and you have fun. They both jumped up and hugged me. Thanks, Dad. I knew you'd understand. They ran to their rooms to do whatever. It didn't matter anymore, did it? In their innocence, they didn't even realize what they had just done to me. My place in their lives was gone. I stood up and headed for the front door. Pauline came up to me. Are you okay, Sam? I tried to straighten up, gather my thoughts. I'm sure I didn't succeed, but I tried to put on a brave face. Yeah, I'm fine. Actually, this will give me a chance to do something I've been putting off for a long time. I have a friend in North Carolina who's been trying to get me to move there for years. I headed for the door, and it seemed to take Pauline a few seconds to process my words. She quickly closed the door and pulled me back by the shoulder so I was facing her. Wait, Sam, you didn't tell me you were moving to North Carolina, did you? Yes, of course I did. Why wouldn't I? You heard them. Thanks to you, they don't need me and haven't wanted to see me for years. Now, they don't need me at all. It's just the end result of the events you set in motion, Pauline. There's nothing left for me here, no one who needs me. You abandoned me, and now they've abandoned me. Now you two are their parents. I'm out of their lives. Congratulations, you won. I felt tears welling up in my eyes. I had to get out of there. I couldn't think of anything more humiliating than to burst into tears right now, in front of the two people who had ruined my life. I quickly left the house and headed for my car. I couldn't get the key into the lock until the last minute. This guy didn't have a fancy remote locking system. It was probably difficult because of my tears. Sam, wait. I heard Dave's voice behind me, and then his hand was on my shoulder. I didn't say a word. I just turned around and punched him hard in the jaw. He fell, but didn't lose consciousness. God, I had waited so long for this moment. Pauline rushed over to make sure he was okay, and I fumbled with the keys again. Sam, don't do this. They're just at that age. They still love you and need you, even if they don't realize it right now. If you leave, it will destroy them. What do you want me to do, Polly? Sit in my crappy one-bedroom apartment, waiting and hoping that my daughters will find time for me? Or more likely be their backup plan if they have nothing to do on the weekend? It's not like that, Sam. Of course it is. You heard the same conversation I did. All I had to look forward to was their visits, and now I don't even have that. You'll break their hearts. I doubt it. But even if I do, at least I won't be the only one. Sam, you saw how happy they were that they didn't have to come to my place on the weekends anymore. To be honest, I doubt they'll even notice, at least for a while. Sam, please don't do this. I never wanted this. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. It doesn't matter. Maybe we'll see each other again someday. Finally, I opened the car door and got out. Dave finally stood up and they both stood there with appropriately mournful expressions on their faces, though I doubted they were sincere. I got into the car and paused before closing the door. I looked at them one last time. Take care of my girls. They both nodded slightly and watched me drive away. I wondered if they would say anything to the girls. I hoped not. I didn't want them to spend time with me out of pity or a sense of duty. It was obviously time to part ways. The hardest part of a family breaking up is the end of dreams. Pauline and I always talked about growing old together, about children and grandchildren coming to visit, about holidays and everything else we could think of. The end of my marriage put an end to many of those dreams, at least for me. But I still looked forward to proms, weddings, and grandchildren, and decided that all of that was now in the past too. Maybe someday I'd see the girls again, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was the end. I called my friend Tim, and he said he had a job for me. The pay would be a little more, although I still had to pay child support. As I said, they didn't need it, but it was my last contact with the girls, and I wanted to say that I had fulfilled my obligations. Just because I didn't want to feel the pain of living so close and yet so far away didn't mean I didn't love them or want to be part of their lives. I wasn't entirely honest when I said that Tim had been trying to lure me to North Carolina for years. In fact, he simply said that he would always have a job for me if I needed it, and that it was time for me to take it. There was a clause in my lease that allowed me to terminate it with 30 days' notice if I changed jobs or moved, so I asked Tim to fax them the necessary letter. I had already paid for the last month's rent and simply asked them to keep the cleaning deposit. I packed everything I wanted into my car, which, unfortunately, I hadn't even filled up with gas, and set off. I tried very hard to drive fast so I could get there as soon as possible. Mainly because, sitting alone in the car, all my thoughts were occupied with the pain of my daughter's rejection. When I arrived in Durham, it was raining, and it seemed like some kind of omen to me. Tim had a home services business, and a place had already been prepared for me. I mainly did repairs and odd jobs, but also pest control. Tim offered to train me so that I could do electrical and plumbing work, and I said I'd think about it. Tim never married, but he had an endless string of girlfriends. I don't think any of them considered Tim someone they could have a serious relationship with, but they enjoyed his money and his fun lifestyle until something better came along. And Tim seemed to be fine with that. I loved my job and was very busy during the day, but the nights were tough, and I started drinking more than ever, and certainly more than I should have. In the mornings, I would wake up somewhere in my apartment in the same clothes I had worn the night before, smelling like a distillery. It was all I could do to forget. By the time I had showered and put on clean clothes, I usually felt much better. So, to be honest, I saw no reason to change my lifestyle in the short term. It helped ease the pain and had no other consequences, although I imagine my liver was suffering greatly. A few weeks after I arrived, Tim threw his annual Independence Day party. Tim had a beautiful house with a large backyard that was perfect for his parties. He bought a bunch of fireworks at the nearest store, and we set them off when it got dark. During the day and evening, we drank, danced, swam, and even played some volleyball. As usual, when I was left alone with my thoughts, I became sad and melancholic. Almost a month had passed, and there was no news from them. As I soon learned, Tim's parties were held once a month and usually coincided with holidays. As everyone knows, there are no good holidays in August, but Tim didn't like that, so he invented a holiday called August Day. It was celebrated on the second Saturday of the month and was nothing more than an excuse for a party. My drinking didn't improve, or rather, I became a master at it, and as a result, I became very angry again. Melanie, or whatever her name was, she wasn't there this time, which upset me greatly. Don't think I had any special feelings for her because I didn't. I just hoped that everything would be the same as last month, and she was a well-known figure. Apparently, I'm decent enough to find a partner for the night. I'm pretty sure that after we finished, I passed out. And just like Melanie, she left when I woke up in the morning. Tim fed me breakfast, and I went home to wallow in my misery and loneliness. This went on for several months, but as I drank more and more, which I didn't expect at all, my ability to remember the names of my partners deteriorated more and more. The woman from Labor Day was blonde. I remember she was pretty boring. On Halloween, the woman was in costume, so even if I hadn't been drunk, I probably wouldn't have been able to tell you much. Plus, it was a costume party, so even people in costumes that don't normally cover the face were wearing masks. She was dressed as Wonder Woman. I'm pretty sure she was a brunette. Tim, being a veteran, used Veterans Day as an excuse to throw a party in November. It was only a couple of weeks after his Halloween celebration, but no one seemed to mind. Thanksgiving was approaching, my first day without girls, and I was already pretty drunk. Finally, I got word from my girlfriends. It was Thanksgiving Day, but not what I was hoping for. I was hoping they would realize I didn't have any plans for Thanksgiving, and then they would realize, or I would tell them, that I had moved out of state. The thing is, in the past, we split Thanksgiving in half. One of us would spend the morning, early evening, and then move over for the late evening, night, and so on every year. This year, I was supposed to be last. Karen didn't call a week before the holiday to confirm plans or if Pauline had told them about my move to apologize for ignoring me for so long or anything. But no, it was Karen who told me that they had been invited to go shopping with Finley and asked if I minded if we skipped our traditional Thanksgiving visit this year. 5 months had gone by and they still thought I lived on the other side of town and was just waiting for them to have some free time. I didn't say anything about moving and just wished them a good time. I spent Thanksgiving alone. I sat in my hotel room and drank. Tim tried to convince me to come over, but I couldn't stand being around people who weren't my family. I went to the hotel knowing, or at least expecting, that they would try to convince me to come over, so I did everything I could to avoid being found. When I woke up the next morning and turned on my phone, I had several messages, missed calls, and voicemails. Most of them were from Tim, who, as I expected, was trying one last time to convince me to join him and his merry band at the party. There was a call from my daughter Karen's phone, and in the attached voice message, she cheerfully wished me a happy Thanksgiving from herself and Wendy and thanked me for letting them go shopping. The last call was from Pauline, and she left a voice message that I was more than sure I didn't want to hear. Of course, like the glutton I am, I listened to it anyway. Sam, it's Pauline. I know we haven't talked in a while, mostly because I thought that's what you wanted. But I know the holidays can be tough for those who are away from their families, so I wanted to check in and see how you're doing. I know the girls have been calling you. I'm sure you understand that they don't know you've moved yet. Please remember that they are still children and are very busy with things that are important to teenagers. They still love you very much. I know you don't want to talk to me, but please, let me know that you're okay. You can email me or send me a text message. Let me say again that I'm very sorry about how things turned out. I guess that's all. Please, Sam, let me know you're okay. I made sure all the messages and letters were deleted, then sent Pauline a short message to let her know I was alive, though that didn't mean I was okay. I really didn't want to do it, but it was easier than thinking about what might happen if I didn't respond. I didn't feel like doing anything, so I opened another beer. The pain didn't go away completely, but I didn't mind waiting a little longer. Over the next few weeks, I barely kept myself going. When I wasn't working, I was drinking or passing out from drinking. Somehow I managed to stay sober long enough to work, but sometimes it was very difficult. As Christmas and New Year's Eve approached, which I was going to spend without my girls for the first time, I began to feel depressed. No one had ever felt as bad as I did or gone through what I had, at least in my imagination. Of course, there were people who were much worse off than me, but that didn't stop me from feeling like I was the worst. Finally, the call I had been waiting and hoping for the past month came. First, the girls called, which I didn't answer, asking about our plans for Christmas. Since our divorce, we had taken turns spending Christmas and New Year's with them. This year, I was supposed to be with them on Christmas Eve, and they left me a message to confirm it. It took me a few days to calm down, call them back, and have the conversation that had been brewing for the last 6 months. But a call from Pauline interrupted my plans. As expected, she left a voicemail and was clearly annoyed. Sam, it's Pauline. I hope you didn't just not get the girl's message and decide to ignore it. I finally told them you were gone. As I predicted, they were very hurt. They always thought they could see you whenever they wanted, and finding out that wasn't the case was very hard on them. I hope you're proud of yourself for hurting your girls. I hate to say this, Sam, but I don't trust you with them right now. I know you would never hurt them physically, but you seem intent on punishing them emotionally for what I did. I wanted to suggest they come visit you, but now I'm not sure that's a good idea. Please, Sam, think about what you're doing to them. Don't ruin your relationship with them because you're angry with me. They're just teenagers and they think like teenagers. If you want to talk about this or anything else, call me anytime. Merry Christmas, Sam. Damn, bitch. I didn't say it out loud because I was alone. I drank a couple more beers and called that bitch. Sam, you bitch. I was choking. Who the hell are you? You can't threaten me that I won't see my kids when I don't see them anymore. Sam, are you drunk? Let's see. Yeah, I almost shit myself. You shouldn't drink so much, Sam. It's bad for you. Bad for me? It's not good for me. What do you care, huh? You already took everything I lived for away from me. What do you care what I do to myself? Do I care about you, Sam? Yeah, I know how much you cared when you cheated on me and left me for Dave's father. I know how much you cared when you let the kids leave me. I didn't do anything. Bullshit, Pauline. Bullshit. Shit. You sent them away on my day off so they'd know they'd never see me again. You're a lying, manipulative, worthless, two-faced whore who never meant anything to me. I heard her take a deep breath. Sam, I understand that you're drunk and angry, so I'm not going to get into it with you. Let's talk when you've sobered up a bit. Who are you to judge me, huh? Who the hell are you? You're cheating on me. I'm hanging up, Sam. With my best friend, kicked me out of the house, sucked me dry, and then judged me. You've got some nerve, Pauline. Pauline? No one answered. She hung up. Damn bitch. I spent Christmas alone. I lay in bed almost all day. I tried to distract myself with sports on TV, but all the schedules on the screen reminded me that it was Christmas, which made me even more depressed, so I drank more beer. I woke up during the Lakers game, either falling asleep or passing out. I smiled when I saw that the Lakers were losing to the Rockets by 20 points and passed out again. In a service company like Tim's, there isn't much free time. We can't just close for the holidays like some companies. Tim had been hired by a mortgage company to repair a house that had been destroyed by the owners after they had mortgaged it. There were several of us, including a plumber and an electrician. I helped with the drywall, and it was a fun couple of days. These guys could joke about anything. It was even nice because when I had been working with the other guys for the past few months, they seemed a little distant and closed off, as if they were having a hard time accepting me. I thought maybe it was because Tim and I had been friends before I started working here. But these guys were really nice, and I enjoyed their company. Towards noon, I saw Tim's pickup truck pull up to the house. He got out of the driver's seat, and another guy I recognized but couldn't remember the name of got out of the passenger seat. They entered the house together, greeted the workers, and headed towards me. Hey, Sam, can we talk? Sure, Tim. For the man who signs my paycheck, I always have time. That was said to make the guys laugh, and it worked. Tim, however, smiled weakly. Let's step outside for a minute, Tim said, turning and heading for the door. I followed him, of course. When we got outside, the other guy stepped aside, obviously to leave us alone. What's up, Sam? He asked. As expected, I guess, I replied, wondering where he was going with this. Okay. Have you been drinking? Only every night for the last 6 months, I laughed. Tim just smiled faintly and chuckled quietly, but there was nothing funny about it. Yeah, I know. I mean today, he said, and his face suddenly became very serious. What? No, Tim, of course not. Good, glad to hear it. But do me a favor. Blow into this. He took a small white device out of his pocket and handed it to me. I looked at it warily. What's that? It's a breathalyzer. I just need to make sure. I looked around. The other guy was watching me, as were my colleagues when I glanced toward the house, although their faces suddenly disappeared from the windows. It seemed I wasn't one of the guys after all. Tim had no reason to be here unless someone had ratted me out. Well, I may have had a beer this morning, I replied hesitantly, knowing that even that wouldn't make him happy. Oh, that's not so bad, he replied, handing me the breathalyzer again. Realizing there was no way out, I reluctantly took the device and blew into it. I didn't know what the result would be, but I knew it would be bad. Tim took the device from me and looked at the display. The small smile on his face immediately disappeared. You failed the test, Sam. That's more than 1 pint of beer this morning. Yeah, right, but I wasn't even close to being drunk. This is for driving, Sam. But if something happens on the construction site and OSHA comes and checks you, they'll find out you're drunk, and I'll be held responsible, not to mention the potential liability if someone gets hurt. Tim, I'm fine. You're not fine. He snorted. What you do at home, in your personal life, is your business. But when you bring it here and put me and my employees at risk, it becomes my business. I want your keys. One of the perks of working for Tim was the use of company cars. We took them home every night so we could drive straight to work in the morning with everything we needed. I handed over the keys. That's enough for today. Here's what's going to happen. Oscar will take you home, then come back here and take your place on the team. Tomorrow, instead of coming to work, come to my office and we'll talk. I just stood there, humiliated. But instead of remorse and regret, I started to get angry. I was fine. I didn't need to be sent home like a sick child. It was nonsense. and I didn't need it. You know what, Tim? I said, taking the helmet off his head and shoving it under his chest. Go to hell. I don't need this crap. Keep it. I pushed him away, walked over to my car, got into the passenger seat, and waited for Oscar to drive me home. He got behind the wheel silently and started the car. We drove to my apartment in silence, with only me mumbling directions to him. When we pulled up, I quickly thanked him and slammed the door. Damn, I was so angry. I felt fine and didn't have any problems. One of those jerks must have called Tim and ratted me out. To hell with them. I don't need other people's opinions about me and what I do. I opened the fridge and saw a supply of beer. Finally, I thought, I don't have to work tomorrow. I woke up in a very bright room that I immediately recognized as a hospital ward. I didn't know how I got there, but I was there. I felt so bad that I believed that a hospital wasn't the worst place to be. Apparently, my awakening caused some changes in my vital signs because a nurse entered the room a couple of minutes later. Okay, you're awake. What happened? I asked. The doctor will be here in a few minutes to talk to you. She checked a few vital signs and the flow in my IV, then left, probably to tell the doctor that I was awake. I looked around the room. The walls were white and the clipboard said that the nurse's name was Brenda and the doctor's name was Anderson. I assumed he would be rich and handsome. Imagine my surprise when a few minutes later, a very attractive female doctor entered the room and began studying what I assumed was my chart. She was clearly Latina and appeared to be in her early 30s. Good afternoon, Mr. Beckman. I'm glad to see you're awake. How are you feeling? I didn't answer right away. I was in a state of near unconsciousness and was trying to figure out how the beautiful woman standing in front of me was connected to the name Anderson. Mr. Beckman. I'm sorry, but because of my preconceptions and the Anderson surname, I was expecting to see an elderly white man, so I was a little taken aback to see a young, beautiful woman. Thank you. If it helps, my husband is a white man, although he's not old yet. That's where the surname comes from. How are you feeling? Very tired and unimportant, I guess. What's wrong with me? Based on the test results, I would say that you have been consuming large amounts of alcohol for a long time. You have alcohol poisoning and severe dehydration. If your friend hadn't called an ambulance, you probably wouldn't have survived. Friend? The doctor quickly flipped through the documents. The ambulance was called by Tim Banks. Of course. Mr. Banks asked me to let him know when you wake up, but he needs your permission to do so. Is that okay with you? I wanted to say no, but in the end I nodded. Yes, of course. We'll keep you here for a couple of days for observation. As the toxins are flushed from your system, there may be complications that require immediate intervention. Any questions, Mr. Beckman? I don't think so. After telling me to get some rest, Dr. Anderson left the room and I was alone. I turned on the TV, mainly for background noise, and settled in to relax. I felt fine, so I doubted I would need several days, but who was I to argue with the nice doctor? About an hour later, there was a knock on the door, and it opened a few inches. I heard a male voice. Are you dressed? Tim. Yes. He entered the room with his usual concise gait. He stopped 1.5 meters from the bed. How are you feeling? Living my life. Haven't decided yet if it's good or bad, I replied with a half smile. I think a thank you wouldn't hurt. No need, Sam. You can thank me when you're healthy and back at work. I didn't think I had a job anymore. What? You think you're the first employee who's asked me to back off? Sam, we've been friends for a long time and I'm doing everything I can to help you get through this. I don't agree with all your decisions, and to be honest, I don't think all these complaints are worth it. My advice is to get off your ass, get a grip, and repair your relationship with the girls. What Pauline did destroyed your marriage and your family. Don't let her destroy your life. Deep down, I knew he was right. I hadn't hurt anyone but myself and probably the girls. In any case, I was giving Pauline exactly what she probably wanted. It was time to get a grip. Tim and I chatted for another hour or so, then he left. The evening passed and I began to feel worse and worse. The doctor said it was my body adjusting to the absence of alcohol. I hadn't had a drink in about 24 hours, which was the longest I'd gone in months, and my body was rebelling. I realized how sad that was. I got through the night and checked out of the hospital the next day. I was given several referrals to psychologists, psychiatrists, a rehabilitation center, and AA. I kept them, but I actually felt that I had already hit rock bottom and didn't need them. I thought that the kick in the butt Tim had given me and the wonderful experience I had just had in the hospital would be enough to get me back on track. I worked for another couple of weeks. Tim was understanding about my need for time off and what I had told him that day. I had saved enough money to weather the financial blow, and when I returned to work, I was happy to be back. The next couple of months went smoothly. Tim's Martin Luther King Day party was fun, and I didn't drink a drop. Although I didn't consider myself an alcoholic, I had no desire to test that theory. I thought I would start drinking beer again someday, but for now, I plan to stick with non-alcoholic beverages. The truth was, I was getting tired of the monthly parties. At first, I thought it was a great way to socialize, but drunken anonymous fun wasn't for me, so I skipped the Valentine's Day party and went out for a big steak dinner instead. On March 1st, my life changed. It was Saturday, and I was running errands. I was on my way to the grocery store when I saw a wild mane of dark blonde curls suddenly fall heavily onto the sidewalk. I looked back and saw that she had tripped over the curb and fallen. She was holding her ankle and writhing in pain. Several people who were nearby didn't pay any attention to her. I quickly walked over to her. "Are you okay?" I asked. I know it was a stupid question, but I didn't know where to start. She looked at me, and tears were already welling up in her pale blue eyes. "I think I twisted my ankle. We need to get you to the emergency room. I can call an ambulance, but I'd be happy to drive you myself if you don't mind. I don't want to bother you." Bother? Nonsense. You just made my day a lot more interesting than it was going to be. By the way, my name is Sam. Well, okay, if you really don't mind. Nice to meet you, Sam. My name is Holly. I helped her to her feet, and when she straightened up, I noticed, "Are you pregnant?" "Oh, yes, about 4 months." "Then let's hurry, just in case." I picked her up and carried her to my car. I put her down for a moment to open the door, then put her in the passenger seat. It didn't take long, as she was very small, but a human body is still heavy to lift. We quickly drove to the emergency room at the local hospital. I went inside and asked for a wheelchair, then took Holly out of the car and sat her in it. There was no one else there, and she was immediately taken to a ward. I didn't know if I could go in, and she didn't invite me, so I stayed in the emergency room. 4 hours. I played games and browsed the internet on my phone. I assumed that at some point she would call her husband, and then I would quietly leave. But everyone who came in was either a patient or someone else, so I waited and waited. Finally, the big doors opened and Holly rolled out in a wheelchair pushed by a nurse in a blue jumpsuit. I assumed she was a fan of the University of North Carolina, but maybe it was just a coincidence. Holly looked back at the nurse and said something, and I heard the word taxi. But the nurse, or orderly, or whoever she was, didn't pay much attention, probably because she knew I was waiting. When Holly turned around and saw me, the smile on her face was as bright as a shooting star, I swear. The nurse nudged her toward me, giving her a "where to" look. I led her outside to my car and put Holly inside. I thanked the nurse, even though she had already turned and walked away. I got into the driver's seat. "I didn't expect you to still be here. I was going to wait for your husband to pick you up, but no one came, so I stayed. I don't have a husband. It's just me and my mom, and she's out running errands." "Did you call her?" "She's just worried and wants to get home. I'll be fine. Since you waited so long, could you give me a ride to my car?" I looked at her bandaged right ankle, then back at her eyes. "Holly, I don't think you can drive with your ankle like that." "Oh, Sam, I didn't even think of that," she replied, looking down at her ankle. "If you don't mind, I'll take you to my place, and then we'll figure out how to get your car." "That's very kind of you, Sam, but I've already taken up enough of your time." "Yes, but I enjoy it. And it's much more interesting than sitting at home, watching TV. I'd be happy to help if you don't mind." "Thank you, Sam." She directed me to the house where she lived with her mother. I pulled into the empty driveway and parked, then carried Holly from the car into the house. I headed for the couch, but she stopped me. "Sam, I'm sorry, but I really need to use the bathroom. Do you mind?" I turned toward the hallway and followed her instructions to the bathroom. I placed her right in front of the door and stepped out, pausing nearby while she did her business. While I waited, I ordered an Uber. She called me, and I entered to find that she had managed to get up and get dressed. I picked her up again and carried her to the couch. "What now?" she asked. "Well, I have to get your car. You can't park there at night." "How are you going to do that?" "I called an Uber and it's on its way. Can I have your keys?" Oh, Sam, you're doing too much for me, but I really appreciate it. She handed me her keys, told me the car's license plate number and where it was parked, and I went outside to wait for my car. It should only take a few minutes. I stopped at the door. Holly, would you like to have dinner with me tonight? I'd love to, Sam, she replied, lighting up with a radiant smile. But I can't go anywhere. Of course you can. I thought we could grab a bite to eat while I get your car, and then we could have dinner here. I was about to leave when I heard her say softly, Sam? I turned to her, and her face became more serious. Sam, you do remember that I'm pregnant, right? I know I'm a man, Holly, but I have my own thoughts, I said with a smile. I remember why. It's just, a lot of men aren't interested in instant families. I just wanted to make sure you knew what you were getting yourself into. Holly, of course, we've only just met, and we still have a lot to learn about each other, but I can assure you that your pregnancy is not a problem. Okay, Sam. I just wanted to, well, make sure. I understand. I'll be back as soon as I can. I grabbed my car keys, walked to the curb, and waited for my Uber, which arrived about 10 minutes later. The ride was uneventful, and I had no trouble finding her car. I decided Italian food was a safe bet, so I found a restaurant near Holly's house and ordered a meal. It was around 7 in the evening when I finally returned to Holly's place with the containers of Italian food in my hands. I found Holly sitting in the same spot, but she had changed into a dress. I said, I wanted to look nice for our first date. You could have stayed that way, but you look even better. She smiled at me as I went to put the food on the table. When I came back for her, she had already stood up and was slowly, albeit on crutches, making her way toward me. I went to help her, but she stopped me. I need to practice. My mom won't be home for a couple of days. I pointed to a chair and she sat down. When she did, I caught a whiff of her perfume, which was obviously freshly applied. You look and smell so good, Holly. I suddenly feel a little awkward. Oh, you look very nice. To be honest, I don't like men who dress up too much. We chatted about everything under the sun. I told her about my job at Tim's company, Durham Commercial Services, and she told me about her part-time job at a local car dealership, where she worked in the registration department. Her mother works as a secretary at a law firm and is her main source of income. Her father left when Holly was 5, and she hasn't seen or heard from him since. She was an only child. I told her about my marriage, or rather its end. She was shocked by Pauline's actions, but apparently didn't approve of how I had treated Karen and Wendy, although she didn't say a word about it. And to be honest, when I said it all out loud, I wasn't particularly pleased with myself. I didn't want to admit it, but Pauline was right. They were acting like teenagers, and I should have acted like an adult. I had to figure out how to fix the situation. I deliberately avoided talking about how she ended up 4 months pregnant, without a husband or a boyfriend. It wasn't my business, and I didn't want to sound judgmental. At one point, her phone rang, and I left to give her some privacy with her mother. It was a beautiful night, with a light breeze blowing and clouds covering most of the moonlight. I looked up at the sky, thinking about the beautiful blonde in the house behind me. It had been several years since my marriage had fallen apart, and I hadn't been in a serious relationship since, but suddenly I thought it was time to consider this possibility. Did I really want to spend the rest of my life alone because my first choice turned out to be a cheating, deceitful bitch? Damn it, I needed to sort out the emotions Pauline had stirred up in me. When I finished my phone call, Holly poked her head out the door to tell me I could come back and thanked me for not interrupting her. We spent the rest of the evening on the couch talking about everything under the sun, except the baby growing in her belly. She didn't propose and I didn't ask. Without noticing how time had passed, we both yawned, and that was the signal that it was time to go. She got up and walked me, on crutches, to the door. We exchanged a quick kiss, nothing more than a kiss, and agreed that I would come over tomorrow to spend Sunday together. I drove home on cloud 9. I slept very well. The next day, I arrived at her house around 9 a.m. With breakfast, I had bought at a nice cafe near her house. French toast, sausage, and potato pancakes cost me a pretty penny, but I didn't care. I knocked on the door and waited patiently. Finally, Holly came out on crutches. When the door opened, I could see she had just gotten out of bed. God, do you really get up this early every day? She asked, squinting and smiling. That's the beauty of my job. Construction starts early. Hell, I even sit and wait for an hour. Well, you brought breakfast, so I'll forgive you. We kissed quickly again. Then I started making breakfast while she wandered over to her chair. She raved about the quality of the breakfast, and I knew she would because I had eaten there before. I suggested we spend the day traveling around the area. By that time, I had been living in North Carolina for several months, but I hadn't gone anywhere except to work and to Tim's parties. So that's what we did. It was a beautiful day, and we had a great time. We went to a museum, which fortunately had free electric cars, so Holly didn't have to walk. We had lunch at a small local cafe, and then spent a couple of hours just sitting in a park we happened to pass by. It was very relaxing, and I noticed that Holly often did things to make contact with me. She would just put her hand on mine or lean her shoulder against mine, but the contact was there. When we got back to her place, she was very tired and her leg was hurting a lot. I gave her a bath and covered her brace with plastic so it wouldn't get wet. I kept her company while she was in the bath, and then helped her get into bed. We agreed that I would stop by after work the next evening. She usually worked on Mondays, but she was planning to take a few days off to rest. I brought her some tacos from a local family-run taco shop, and we talked a little more. While we were talking, I massaged her feet, and soon she fell asleep. I tucked her into bed and got ready to leave. As I was leaving, she sleepily thanked me for coming and reminded me that her mother was coming tomorrow. Before I realized what that meant, she was already asleep. As I walked to my car, I thought she had let me know that since her mother was coming home, she didn't need me anymore. The next evening, I was sitting in my apartment getting ready to watch a documentary about World War II and somehow force myself to eat my frozen dinner. What is this Salisbury steak? When the phone rang. Hello? Where are you? Holly's angelic voice asked. I'm home. Why aren't you here? I thought you were coming. I thought you didn't want me to come since your mom was coming home. You even reminded me of that when I left last night, I replied, a little embarrassed. Ah, men. I told you that so you'd be ready to meet her. We've been waiting for you. Okay, I'm on my way. Holly greeted me at the door with a long kiss and hugged me around the neck. I could get used to this, I thought. I walked into the house and Holly's mom, Barbara, was already carrying food to the dining table. If it weren't for the age difference, they could have been twins. Barbara had the same wild blonde curls, although her hair was more well-groomed than Holly's. She was in great shape and weighed probably a little more than Holly. I walked over to her expecting a handshake, but she pushed my hand away and hugged me tightly, kissing me on the cheek like a mother. I'm so glad to meet you, Sam. Holly has told me so much about you. I'm very pleased to meet you, Mrs. Allison. Please call me Barbara, and by the way, Allison is Holly's last name, not mine. My last name, believe it or not, is Smith, thanks to my last husband. He was the third, if you count them, and I have no intention of living to see the fourth. I glanced at Holly, and she just rolled her eyes at her mother's revelation. I guess it was useful. Since the food was ready, I quickly washed the dishes, and we sat down at the table. Barbara had made stuffed pasta and garlic bread, with fresh garlic diced, as it should be, and everything was delicious. I'm sorry for the confusion, Barbara. I realized that Holly meant that since you were coming home tonight, I wasn't expected. No problem, Sam. Misunderstandings happen. I'm just glad to meet Holly's new boyfriend. I glanced at Holly when I heard the word boyfriend, and she smiled back at me. As I said, she's told me a lot about you. I understand you work in construction? I work for Durham Commercial Services. Some of the work is construction-related, installing drywall and things like that, but we also do pest control, electrical work, and plumbing. I guess it's more home repair and maintenance than construction. Do you like it? I like working with my hands. My boss has hinted that I'll be offered a project manager position in the near future. What do you do? I'm a legal secretary. I work directly with senior partners, so I often stay late and travel a lot. By the way, thank you for taking care of Holly when she hurt herself. You're welcome, Barbara. It's been a long time since I've had anyone to take care of. I sank into thought, remembering the faces of my daughters. I think I came to my senses pretty quickly, but Holly and Barbara could tell from my expression what had happened. We chatted non-stop during dinner, and then I started cleaning up. By the time I finished, it was late. Holly and Barbara seemed to say goodnight to each other, and then Barbara came over to me. I'm very tired. I'm going to bed. Traveling takes all my energy. It was nice meeting you. She hugged me again and kissed me on the cheek, then headed down the hall to her bedroom. The house was modest, with 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. Barbara had the master bedroom in the back of the house, and Holly had the second bedroom using the second bathroom across the hall. Holly asked me to turn off the lights while she watched a movie on Netflix. They had one of those deep couches, so there was enough room for us to lie down together. I settled behind her, to her left, and she lay in front of me. It was some kind of romantic movie, but I could only focus on the beautiful woman lying in front of me. A couple of minutes later, we were making love. The credits were rolling on the TV screen as we lay there, happily snuggled up together. Minutes passed, we both fell asleep, and I slowly woke up about an hour later. You should probably go. You have to work tomorrow. Holly broke the silence. I knew she was right, but I really didn't want to leave, and I was willing to get up early to make it home in time for work if I had to. We walked to the front door. See you tomorrow? When I looked back, she was still standing in the doorway, and we waved to each other as I started the engine and drove away. I hoped I wasn't being too optimistic. It seemed like last night was a test run so we could get a feel for each other. I had to leave to be ready for work the next day, but I didn't want it to happen again, so I brought a change of clothes just in case. I wasn't going to say anything to Holly unless I had to. Barbara met me at the door, and I joined Holly on the couch. When Barbara called us to dinner, I was surprised to see only 2 plates. Holly and I sat down at the table, and Barbara excused herself and left. She reappeared about 30 minutes later looking ready for a night out on the town. If Holly hasn't told you, I have a date tonight. I'll be back in the morning. Have a nice evening, kids. I worked at the construction site for a little over 2 weeks after Holly's fall. We spent almost every evening together, although some nights we just slept because I was starting to get exhausted, and that was dangerous. Events seemed to repeat themselves when Tim and Oscar drove up to the job site together. I quickly glanced around to see if anyone looked guilty of telling on Tim, but I didn't notice anything unusual. I wasn't worried because I hadn't had a drink since I got out of the hospital, but it made me angry that someone was trying to get Tim in trouble again. To my surprise, Tim headed for the house where we were working, and Oscar was already waiting by the truck. He greeted all the workers and praised them for a job well done. Finally, he came over to me, and I thought, here we go. Sam, can I talk to you for a minute? I nodded and followed him. I looked in his pocket for the breathalyzer, but didn't find it. Problems, boss? No. I just visited a couple of sites today and decided to check. You didn't come to the last 2 parties, which I completely understand, and I just wanted to see how you were doing. Everything's great, Tim. I started seeing a girl. God, that's great, Sam. I'm glad you're starting to rebuild your life. How are the kids? Actually, yes. I need some time off when it's convenient. I'm going to fly out to see them. That's good, Sam. That's great. Just let me know when and for how long, and I'll take care of you. I'll check flights when I get home and let you know. I flew out the following Tuesday. I assumed the girls would be busy over the weekend and might not even be home. We always expected the girls to be home in the evenings, and I assumed the rules would remain the same. Hoping I would be able to leave the girls overnight, I didn't skimp on a nice hotel room with 2 double beds. I was willing to do whatever it took to repair the relationship my resentment had destroyed. As the plane raced through the clouds, I thought about Holly and our goodbye. She had helped me find tickets and pack my things. By then, she was getting around much better, but I still carried her up the stairs to my second-floor apartment, and for the first time, we made love in my bed instead of hers. We returned to her apartment when it was time for me to go to the airport. She walked me to the door. I'm going to miss you, Sam. I love you. I suspected she was nervous as she looked into my eyes when she first confessed her love to me. But she didn't need to be nervous. I lifted her chin with my finger and raised it so I could look into her eyes. I love you too, Holly. I'll be back as soon as I can. She smiled broadly and hugged me again, then I stepped back. The warm feeling stayed with me all the way to Austin. My plane landed in the middle of the day. I had a quick bite to eat and checked into my hotel. I bought a few things at the store that I thought I might need during my stay and waited. The girls were supposed to be back from school around 4:30, and I assumed that would be the case this time as well. Then they usually did their homework before dinner. I figured that would be the case and decided to stick with that assumption until I heard otherwise. It was 5:15 when I pulled up to the house in my rental car. The Toyota Pauline was parked in the driveway next to an unfamiliar old Nissan. Dave's car wasn't there, so I figured he was still at work. I expected someone to come out of the house when I pulled up to the driveway, but no one did. I assumed that meant no one had noticed me, but I agreed that it could be because no one was interested in me. Soon enough, I would find out. I knocked on the door and waited for an "I'm coming" to come from inside. The door opened, and Pauline appeared in the doorway. and I had to admit that she looked just as beautiful as she had before. But I also realized that I didn't have any feelings for her, which I couldn't say before. She looked at me in surprise, quickly walked through the door and hugged me. I don't know if I would have hugged her back, but she pulled me close to her, so it didn't matter. Sam, my God, it's you. You're back. Did you move back? The girls are going to be thrilled. Finally, she let go of me and stepped back. No, Pauline, I'm not back. I flew in to see the girls. She looked disappointed by my answer, and I decided it was because of the girls, not her. I wondered for a moment if everything was okay in her new marriage, but it didn't bother me, and I quickly dismissed the thought. Oh, good. They're doing their homework. I'll call them. Pauline, wait. I need to tell you something. She closed the door completely and turned to listen to what I had to say. She looked alarmed, probably assuming that something hateful was about to come out of my mouth. Pauline, I just wanted to say I'm sorry for the way I talked to you on the phone the other day. You know what I'm talking about, I'm sure. She nodded. I was hurt. I was angry. You were drunk? I was drunk, and that's a bad combination. I didn't want to admit it, but you were right. At that moment, I could barely take care of myself, let alone the girls. But either way, you didn't deserve to be treated that way, and I wanted to apologize. Thank you, Sam. I really appreciate it. It's been a difficult time for everyone. How long are you in town? I flew in on Sunday. I was hoping the girls would stay with me for a couple of days. Why don't you leave them here for the whole time? I'll pack them a bag for a few days. I'd really appreciate that. Thanks, Pauline. Sam, could you come over tomorrow after you drop the girls off at school? Just you and me. I had been expecting this. Pauline had always tried to get me to talk about it. I assumed she was mostly trying to take the blame off herself, but apparently it was time for a new conversation. Taking a deep breath, I replied, Sure, Pauline, I can do that. She probably took my agreement as more than it was, but she seemed satisfied and smiled. Okay, see you tomorrow then. I'll go get the girls and tell them to get ready. Less than a minute later, the front door flew open and my girls came running out, showering me with such ovation that any midfielder would have been jealous. I couldn't make out a single complete sentence, but I heard a lot of, I'm sorry, we're so sorry, and I love you. Finally, we ended up on the lawn. I was lying on my back and the girls were sprawled out on top of me. They seemed to have grown up very quickly. They were still trying to talk at the same time, so I raised my hand to stop them. Girls, you don't need to apologize or forgive me. I was an adult. Well, at least I was supposed to be. And what happened was my fault. I had already lost your mom, and I felt like I was losing you too, and I couldn't handle it. Yes, Dad. But we could have been more careful, said Wendy. But then you would have ruined the reputation of teenagers everywhere. I laughed, diffusing the tension. Listen, girls, we can blame each other, but I prefer to look to the future. Your mom said I could have you stay with me until Sunday, so go pack your things. Oh, Dad, but this weekend. Don't think about this weekend, young lady, Pauline interrupted. Now go pack your things. I watched the girls run away, making sure they were out of sight. This weekend? I asked Pauline. Oh, we were planning to take them to the lake. Dave's parents have a house there. It's nothing that can't be postponed. It's more important. Thanks, Pauline. I didn't want to ruin your plans. She nodded in response and went to check on the girls. I walked over to the rental car, made sure there was enough room for their bags, and soon we were on our way. We pulled up to the hotel and unpacked their bags. They both lay down on the bed they were supposed to share and looked around. We went to Texas Roadhouse for dinner, and I groaned in disgust when Karen ordered a salad. Okay, it was a big salad, and it was very good, but come on, this is a steakhouse. However, Wendy did me the honor of ordering a steak and baked potatoes. Sometimes you have to live a little. We spent the evening learning about their lives. Karen had found herself a boyfriend. Is there a father out there ready for his daughter's first boyfriend? His name was Rob, and he had been in a few of her classes. She showed me a picture of him, and he was pretty cute, but I was a teenager once, so in the end, I made them do their homework. I just relaxed and went online, glad that my anger and bitterness had only cost me time with my daughters, not my daughters themselves. A couple of times they caught me just watching them. They smiled, I smiled, and we all went back to what we were doing. It was very sweet. The next morning, I took them to school and then headed on the dreaded drive to my old house to talk to Pauline. To be honest, I didn't see the point. We had been divorced for many years. I was ready to talk about the children as I now wanted to play as active a role in their lives as possible, despite the distance between us. But I doubted that was what Pauline had in mind. I had barely reached the front door when Pauline opened it, waiting for me to arrive. She poured us each a glass of water, and we sat down at the kitchen table. I remembered all the conversations we had had at that table, including the one when she told me she was divorcing me. Thanks for coming, Sam. I know you didn't want to. Unless it's about the kids and finding me a date, I just don't see the point, Polly. Sam, it's been 4 years, and we still haven't had a real conversation. I know you were hurt, and the part of me that still loved you suffered for you. But so much time has passed that I hoped the anger would have subsided a little, but it seems like it hasn't subsided at all. Why would it have subsided? Has anything changed? No, nothing has changed. You're still cheating on me. She tried to interrupt me, but I raised my hand. It doesn't matter if you slept with him before you married me or not. You still cheated on me. You spent time with him. You lied to me about where you were. You spent enough time with him to develop strong feelings and decided to leave me for him. You destroyed our family. He destroyed our family. You left me in financial need and with 4 days a month to see the girls, while you got most of their time and financial security. That's how it was, Sam. I didn't marry David for money. We love each other and we're very happy. That's great for you, but it has nothing to do with me. What, am I supposed to be happy just because you're happy? Well, no. I just wanted to tell you that I didn't divorce you and marry David to hurt you and get more money. It just happened. Great, that's great. I'm happy for you. I'm glad that destroying my life didn't cause you too much trouble. See, that's what I'm talking about. You want to turn everything upside down to make me look evil, like I did it just to hurt you, when that's not what it was. Whether it was your intention or not, you knew damn well that's how it would turn out. What almost always happens in a divorce, the mother gets the kids, and the father gets partial custody. There's nothing you can do about it. I slammed my hand on the table. Of course it is. It wouldn't have happened if you had stayed faithful to me. To fall in love with Dave, you had to open yourself up to the possibility. All those times you went out together or just hung out doing whatever were a direct blow to our marriage, and you did nothing. Nothing. You did nothing to stop it. I don't know what you're hoping for, Pauline, but if you think we're going to be friends somehow, you're going to be disappointed. I'll try to be civil to you when we're in the same place, but that's all I can do. Sam, you're right. And I'm sorry. I was wrong. And I regret it. But, damn it, Sam, I would. I would really like to forget about it. I know I hurt you. I understand that. But isn't there some way, now that it's been a few years, isn't there some way you can forgive me? Not forget, but forgive. I tried my hardest not to lash out at her, even though I thought she was being completely ridiculous. She just didn't understand. Pauline, because of you and that jerk, I lived like a starving student for several years. Most of the time, I barely had anything to eat and lived in a shitty apartment in a shitty neighborhood. I'm sorry, Sam, but how could I have known that? You didn't know because you didn't want to know. You knew how much I made. You knew where I lived, and the rent was listed right on the website. You knew how much you were getting in alimony. It's simple math, Pauline. But you didn't care about the conditions you left me in. You had your own life and a new, richer husband, so who needed me? The girls didn't say anything, so I thought, you buried your head in the sand. That's what you did. The girls didn't say anything because they didn't know. I made sure that every weekend when they came over, the pantry and refrigerator were full. The rest of the time, I lived on ramen and macaroni and cheese. Good thing a box of macaroni and cheese is enough for two if you don't overdo it. Besides, I was trying to save so they could go out when they wanted to, and even more so to save up for that stupid video game. You knew that, but you went and bought it anyway, like it was no big deal, and I guess it was nothing to you. You know what? Screw civilized people. If we ever end up in the same place in the future, just stay away from me. Got it? Just stay away. Sam, I didn't... You want to say anything else, Pauline? This might be your last chance. Sam, all I can say is that I'm really sorry. I didn't know things were that bad, and you're right that I didn't realize it. I thought you'd tell me yourself since it was all so important to you. Yeah, it wasn't humiliating enough that my wife left me from my best friend. Let me go to them and tell them how bad I am. Pauline sighed heavily and seemed to be thinking something over in her head. I wanted to just walk away, but I wanted to get this over with and was determined to see it through. Sam, you're right. I just didn't see the situation from your point of view, and it was probably easier for me not to know the truth. I already felt guilty enough, and I guess that allowed me to think that you were okay. There's no point in letting the facts intrude on your reality, right? I guess it was naive to think we could all be friends again. I guess so. But we have daughters to raise, and I'd like to figure something out. Summer visits, vacations, things like that. Of course, Sam. I'd never take them away from you as long as you're okay. We'll figure something out. Even though it wasn't the most pleasant experience, I was glad that conversation was behind me. Now I knew for sure that all those times Pauline asked me how I felt about her picking up girls, she was just trying to take the blame off herself. She didn't care about me. She just wanted to convince herself that her choices weren't hurting me that much. I picked up the girls from school and we went to the nearest mini golf course. We kept score and had a great time. When we got back to the hotel, I gave them their homework. I ordered pizza and we talked over dinner. This time, it was my turn to answer questions. I told them about my life in North Carolina, left out the drinking, and apologized again for my behavior. They assured me that they forgave me and were just happy to have me back. They were especially happy to have spent time with me in North Carolina. I also told them about Holly. They were surprised that I was dating a pregnant woman, and I asked them to tell me more about it. God, Dad, Wendy said. You're almost done with us, and now you can start all over again. That's another 18 years. You do realize you're almost 40, right? The smile on her face was priceless. We had always been able to tease each other, and I was glad we hadn't lost that habit. I think I remember, although at my advanced age, I can't always remember such complicated things. I'm already planning to buy a modified wheelchair so I can keep up with the young ones. We all burst out laughing. It was so nice to be with them again. When dinner was over, they went back to their homework, and I went back online. I didn't want to disturb them watching TV, and there wasn't anything interesting on anyway. I called Holly after they had gone to bed and told her about the latest events. We talked for about an hour, expressing our love for each other and how much we missed each other. I said I hoped we would see each other again soon, and she replied that she couldn't wait to see us. After our conversation, I went to bed. The rest of the visit was similar. Dinner on Friday, bowling and mini golf on Saturday, since we didn't have to worry about school. I had an early flight on Sunday and wanted to spend as much time with them as possible. And they were fine with that, of course. If they wanted to hang out with their friends or go to the lake, they didn't get in the way. On Sunday morning, I drove them home. At the girls' insistence, I went inside to say goodbye to Pauline. I tried to be a good role model, but it took all my strength. I hadn't seen Dave the whole trip, and today was no exception. I decided he was avoiding me on purpose. The flight home was bittersweet. I was sad to leave the girls, although I was glad everything was okay when I left, but I missed Holly very much and looked forward to seeing her. At the airport, I took a taxi and went straight to her house. Barb opened the door and led me to Holly's bedroom. She's waiting for you. If you know what I mean, she said, smiling and winking at me. By June, I had moved in with Holly and Barbara. I was staying there almost every night anyway, so when the lease was up, I didn't bother renewing it. This allowed me to save money on rent, although I insisted on contributing to the household expenses. Since the girls' school year ended in late May, I sent them to visit their grandparents for a couple of weeks in mid-June. This allowed them to relax after school and spend time with their friends, but still be with me in North Carolina for Father's Day. Holly bonded with them right away and vice versa. While I was at work, Holly took them to get their nails done, to the movies, etc. Karen and Wendy told me every night how much fun they were having and asked when I was going to propose. I admitted that I had already bought the ring and was just waiting for the right moment. I think they liked that I was keeping them in the loop. When we saw them off on their flight back home on the last weekend of June, there were a lot of tears. I hoped they would come visit us again before school started in August, but there were no guarantees. And the next time they would come was supposed to be for Thanksgiving. I was hoping to go to Texas to see them, but with work and Holly's baby coming, I wasn't sure it would work out. At least to celebrate the 4th of July, we decided to go to Tim's party. I knocked on the door, and Tim greeted Holly and me by name. And that's when I realized for the first time that Tim and Holly knew each other. I didn't talk much about work, so that topic just didn't come up. Other guests came in right after us, so we didn't have a chance to talk, although he did congratulate Holly on the baby. We went inside, chatted a bit, and soon I went to get plates for Holly and myself. Over the past month, Holly had become a glutton, and even when I served myself, I knew I would eat less than half. Tim came over to me as I was adding the pasta salad. You didn't tell me you were dating Holly, he began. I didn't think it mattered, I replied. I didn't even know you two were acquainted until today. She's a friend of a friend of a friend. She came to a few parties last year. The last one was Halloween, I think. She was there in a costume. He suddenly fell silent, and when I looked at him to see what was wrong, his face had a distant, pensive expression. I looked at him for a moment before interrupting his reverie. "What's going on, Tim?" He snapped out of his trance, but his expression remained the same. "How far along is she?" "About 8 months. Why?" "Just, Sam, do you remember the Halloween party?" "Partly, I guess. I was still drinking back then, so not much. Why do you ask?" "Well, I don't think you remember, but you slept with Holly that night. I saw you go into one of the bedrooms." "Sorry to correct you, buddy, but I remember one thing about that night. My girlfriend had dark hair, and Holly, as you can see, has very light hair." "I know, but Holly was dressed as a Wonder Woman with a dark wig. And of course, she was wearing a mask like everyone else." I fell silent and remembered that night. I allowed that it could have been a wig, but even if that was true, and Holly and I had slept together anonymously a few months before we met, I didn't see the point in this conversation. "Okay, let's say you're right. So what?" "Listen, Sam. Holly broke up with her boyfriend a few months before that, and they had been together for years. More specifically, he left her for a girl 10 years younger. Neither of you made the right decisions back then. I don't know anything about Holly's sex life, whether you were the only one she slept with at the time, or even that night." "Tim, what?" "Sam, Halloween was 8 months ago, and she's 8 months pregnant." "Sam, that could be your child." Tim's last 5 words hit me with such force that I was speechless. Could it be true? Holly and I hadn't talked much about our recent past. She knew about my marriage and how it ended, and that I had found solace in alcohol for a while. But we had never talked about my one-night stand and how she got pregnant. It was time to talk about it. I put down my plate and went to look for Holly. She was standing in a small group of other women and smiled when she saw me. "I was waiting for you to eat, sweetie. I'm really hungry. Eat for two, remember?" "I know, it's just, we need to talk." I took her by the hand and led her to one of Tim's spare bedrooms. Holly saw the look on my face and immediately became concerned. "Sam, what's wrong?" she asked as I sat her down on the bed. "Holly, I never asked you how you got pregnant. I always thought it was your business, and if you wanted to share, you would tell me. But now I feel like I need to ask." "I always thought it was my business. Can I ask why you feel like you need to know?" "Do you trust me, Holly?" "Completely, Sam, with my whole life." "I have a reason, I promise. And I'll tell you when we're done. But right now, can you just tell me what happened?" She lowered her head thoughtfully, then looked up at me and said, "Terry broke up with me a couple of months ago. We'd been together for years, and he always said he didn't need marriage to be together. He left me for some 20-year-old blonde with huge silicone breasts. It was a complete disaster for me." "What did you do?" "I know that many women start living promiscuously to prove their attractiveness. I withdrew into myself. I didn't leave the house and ignored people who tried to help me. I was deeply depressed and allowed myself to shut myself off from the world. My mom let me behave like that for a while, but eventually she started pushing me to do something. In the end, I agreed to go with my friends to Tim's Halloween party. I had met Tim before, but I didn't know him well, although my friends had told him what had happened to me, so he didn't mind me coming. He was always good at remembering names. I've never been a heavy drinker, so even though I didn't drink much that night, I was pretty drunk. At the party, I saw a guy. I really wanted to have sex, and we ended up in one of the bedrooms. He's the father of my child." "I'm sorry, Sam. I never wanted to tell you about this." "It's okay, Holly. It's really okay. I know it's very personal, but it all makes sense, you know?" "Okay. Are you sure he's the father? I mean, there was no one else around that night or at that time?" She gave me a surprised look, clearly more interested in why I was asking, and for a moment I thought she was either going to get angry or just say it was none of my business, but then she answered, "No, Sam, no one else. I haven't been with anyone since Terry broke up with me, and I hadn't been with anyone before our wonderful first time. What did this guy look like?" "I don't know. He was taller than me and in good shape, but we were all in costumes and masks." "What costume was he wearing?" "Sam, what—" "Please, Holly, this is very important." "It was a Scottish costume. He was wearing a loose white shirt and, damn, what's it called? A skirt. A kilt. Yes, a kilt. He had something like a beret on his head, and he even had funny plastic bagpipes." While she was talking, I searched for photos on my phone. Finally, I found the right series of photos and showed it to Holly. Did he look like this? When she saw the image on the screen, her eyes widened and she jumped up from her seat. That's him. What's going on, Sam? Why do you have a photo of him on your phone? I took it in stride, but you need to explain what's going on. Baby, I'm sorry I upset you. I just wanted to be sure before I said anything. What are you sure about? Holly, the man in that photo is me. She couldn't have been more stunned if I had walked up to her and punched her in the face with all my strength. It was a good thing there was a chair behind her because she just collapsed into it in shock. Huh? Was all she could finally say. Tim took this picture of me when I went to a party last year. Holly, baby, I think that's my baby you're carrying. Holly just stared at me in confusion. I wondered what she was thinking. I just waited for her to figure it all out. Damn, I couldn't even comprehend it myself. She slowly lowered her eyes and looked at her stomach, then back at me. Is, is that, is that your baby? It looks like it. Oh my God, Sam. Dreams really do come true. What? I asked, a little stunned and not understanding what was happening. Ever since I met you, I've dreamed that this was your baby, not the baby of some random stranger. I know it didn't matter to you, and that's one of the reasons I love you so much. But I really wanted this to be our baby in every sense, and now it is. Oh, Sam, I'm so happy. Epilogue. Holly and I got married quickly at the courthouse just a couple of weeks before Ashley Barbara Beckman arrived. When Holly had recovered enough from the birth, we threw a big party to celebrate. Barbara surprised everyone by marrying one of the firm's former partners and retiring to spend the rest of her life traveling in a motorhome. She moved out of Holly's house and confessed to me in complete secrecy that she had been waiting for Holly to make a decision about her life before moving on. It turned out that the number of men she had supposedly been dating had been reduced to one. Since nothing was keeping us in North Carolina except my job, Holly and I decided to move to Texas to be closer to my daughters. Thanks to the experience I gained working for Tim, I was able to find a much better job with a higher salary, which allowed Holly to become a stay-at-home mom. Considering that 2 more girls were soon added to our family, it was more than a full-time job. During the entire time I lived in North Carolina, which was about 3 years, Tim never stayed with one woman for very long and never gave any indication that he was going to do so. 2 years later, we returned to Texas and received a wedding invitation in the mail. Neither of us knew the bride's name. We flew to the wedding and met the bride. By the time I returned to Austin, Karen had enrolled at the University of Texas, and Wendy was finishing her senior year of high school. She had been accepted to the University of Texas, as well as several other schools, but was still considering her options. I encouraged her to do what was right for her and told her I would be there for her when she returned. Pauline and Dave were having problems. For some reason, Dave didn't trust Pauline because he had been married to a woman who had cheated on her husband. I don't know if Pauline did anything to make him worry or if it just popped into his head. Apparently, it coincided with Karen leaving for college, so maybe it was just a result of him having more time to himself. I didn't care either way, but part of me saw it as some kind of karma. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Check out the next video and subscribe to my channel.